Hello YouTubers. I am going to do a small review of a new round reel. It's actually not completely new to me. I've had it for about 3 months. And I'm going to talk about the ones that I've had before first. So, I'm putting that back out of the way for now. The first round reel that I had was an Abu Garcia Ambassador round reel. I believe it was a 3500 classic. My dad had ordered it, and back then Bass Pro Shops was only a shop and mail order. There was no internet anything for it yet. It was like 1985, 86. Excuse me. I had asked my dad if I could have a bait cast setup, an all-around one for bass, because he was taking me bass fishing with him fairly consistently, and I was using his equipment. Now, me being me, I've never been one to want to use other people's equipment. I kind of don't like that, you know. I like having my own stuff to do with. So I asked him, he said, okay, sure. So what he did is he traded me my time for making my allowance from chores to purchase this. So instead of him actually giving me cash for what I was doing for chores, I did my chores, and he would just put the physical cash in a lockbox, which is a pretty cool system for him to have. I was actually really titillated, I guess you could say, that my dad would even consider that, because my dad came up from a really poor background, so using money for frivolity was something he took very seriously and thought about before doing. He very much was a penny pincher, and he still is to this day, which has led to him saving some money here and there on a few things. But it was an Ambassador 3500 Classic. It was a silver. It had these. Now, I don't know why companies made more plastic gearing these days. I hate plastic gears. And then they make you purchase the upgraded parts if you want them. Fuck you, I hate that shit. Unless you get a higher end one that has metal gears already. And then some of the higher ones still have plastic or nylon anyway. So, it had brass gears. It was I think a 4.5 to 1, and this is back when, you know, 6.0 and above was unheard of in a bait caster. You did not have such things. You did not have fast baits at that time. So, apparently everybody wants to communicate with me right now while I'm doing a fucking video. Anyway, so I had a joy with this thing. I could take it apart very easily as a teenager. I was always tinkering with things anyways. It was a very simple design, straight through, couple gears, couple of nice big bearings, and that was it. I'd take it apart every 3 to 5 months, take my dad's gun cleaner, spray all the parts, lay it out on the towel. I always have a towel when I'm doing things. It's still here from me actually maintaining this one I have now. And it served me for over 18 years. And I would order from Abu Garcia the parts to replace the old ones, and just keep it going. And it worked great. I had it on a Fenwick hook setter line rod. Those rods were with me, and the two that I'm going to talk about were with me until 4 years ago, when I got my Ducket and Shimano setup. It's the first new setup I've had in like 20, 21 years. The other one I had was a non-round reel, and it was a Quantum Super Cast something or other from the same time period. Ugly reel, ugly. Had it on some loose rod that was out at the time. And they worked. one was longer than the other. The longer one I had for spinner baits, some of the deeper running spinner baits, some of the like bigger Rapala minnows, those type of things. And I didn't have near the same amount of knowledge as I do now. So I didn't know about rod tip actions, return rates on tip, any of that stuff. I just knew the shit said this line to this line, and that was it. There's only like 5 or 6 lines you can even get at the time. There was not the same variety as there is now. So that one lasted me as long too, because I did the same thing with ordering parts and maintaining them. But I've always had this fascination with round reels. Don't get me wrong, I love low profile reels. They make fishing very comfortable. Round reels are not as comfortable to fish, but they have this magic. The drag. A star drag in a round reel is a completely different animal from any other type of reel with a star drag. Trust me. So I ended up donating those to a friend of mine, Kurt Holzer. Actually, don't know if I donated both of them or not. I know I donated one of them. But anyway, they're gone. And then I got a Calyx from Abu Garcia. Calyx 61. There's different sizes in that series. Now, the Calyx is a really economically minded but super smooth reel. And their claim to fame, the Calyx series, is the fact that they have a fairly small profile for a round reel, but they got monster gears and drag. They're badass. So I got one. I thought they were the inner workings of every round reel, and up to a point that was the case. They are typically very close to the same. But there's differences, and I fucked it up the first time I opened it up and pickled a piece that was vital to the operation of the whole thing, and pretty much ended up having to scrap it. Now, it was $50 out of my pocket. I really didn't fucking care. So I kept it for parts, ordered another one, because I knew how good the reviews on these reels were. But now I knew how to do things on it. So what I did is, I went and I bought a ugly stick, 7-foot ugly stick, extra heavy action trigger rod, bait cast rod, and took the new Calyx, took all the upgraded parts I bought for this reel before I pickled that part, took all those upgraded parts and my upgraded greases and everything else, and put this one Calyx together for my friend Jim that I met at the last job I was at. Jim is a really cool individual, has a pretty decent boat. You know, he'd been taking me out for a while. I hadn't been paying for gas or drinks or anything. I figured, fuck it, I'm going to return the favor and get him a cool setup. So, you know, between the ugly stick and the reel and the upgraded parts, it was about $120 some odd outfit, which is, for catfishing, not that bad, because people spend several hundreds of dollars on some catfishing rigs. And it, man, that thing casts good God. And that rod, holy shit, is a badass rod. Good God. But I needed another round reel. Had experience with the Calyx, but the price points on eBay had started going up on those because of their popularity. I mean, they took off like wildfire after I bought my first one. For some reason, the talk about them online just started increasing the sales of that model line like mad, above the other Abu Garcias, believe it or not. Enter Luz. Now, I did have a Luz Childress reel back in the mid-'80s before I got the round reel from Abu. And it was a good reel. But there were aspects of Luz Childress, which was 2 people together at the time, that made me very angry. Mainly it was their warranty work, because I had issues with the reel. I'd send it in and they would charge out the ass for repair work, when it said plainly on my 1-year thing, anything within reason will be covered unless it's due to user error or abuse. I never abuse fishing equipment, ever. I treat equipment for fishing better than I treat some humans. So, it really irritated me. I got rid of it to somebody that wanted it, and for a while, I really didn't have any compulsion to get another loose product. Then I had the Abu round, then I had the Calyx round, and it renewed my love for Abu Garcia. They're very precise in what they make, but there's other round reel companies out there that are doing really great work with round wheels, and Luz is one of those for their price point. So, I got this one. This is an sc600. The SC series is a fairly heavy reel. The cast parts, there's stamped and cast parts to this. I do not know what the actual metal is. I believe it's aluminum. But everything on here is pretty rock solid. You know, some of these round reels, they don't have the extra tube up here for extra strength. This one has the two plates on the bottom for the base pad. Then you'll notice it's actually riveted on, pinned. The one for the push bar is nice and thick. Some of them are pretty skinny. It's got a nice thick plate for the finger. It's actually grooved for the finger, which I find makes this a lot more comfortable. It's got the bait click, so when you click it up, it has that click. Okay, so you can indicate to yourself when a fish is taking line if you turn the drag down a fair amount. It's butter smooth. It doesn't really spin a whole lot. I don't have upgraded anything in this, and this, without upgrades, already has carbon fiber drag, stainless steel washers and carbon fiber in it. I have relubed it with Cal's grease that most people in saltwater use for their reels, and I also have Impro 7 gun oil that I use for my oil lube for reels. I don't use the reel lube. I don't like it as much as I do the gun stuff. It's got a lot lower friction to it, so it has a tendency to let me cast further with less effort. It is a very strong drag. Strong drag. The only unfortunate thing that this reel has is that the pressure knob for the weight of what you have for tackle on the end of your line is extremely sensitive. And even so, the pin system for the Dragon here, I have it set one higher than what the factory one is already set, because you have to keep this dial a little lower than what you typically would on a bait cast. Because if you turn past a certain point, this handle becomes increasingly harder to turn. It puts too much pressure on the frame, and it pinches the frame and the bearing that allows or bearing system rather, that allows the turning of this handle. It will still turn the gears, it will still turn the spool, but it becomes increasingly hard. So there's a balance that has to be had with an SC that you're not going to have on other round reels. Now, it's nice and smooth right now. It doesn't really free very much, but it's very comfortable to spin. It's just not one of those ones that's just going to free spin. It's not in its nature unless you turn it way, way down. Then it becomes more. But it's still, it stops itself, see? So, that's one thing. It also has this semi clanky kind of movement to the handle. Well, the handle's rock solid, and it still has this. It's not the handle; it's like the portion that goes into the reel. I'm not quite sure what that's about. It doesn't disturb the tenacity or the strength of this reel in any way. It is registered with a line capacity that's on the reel. See, 312. I think it's 225 for the 30 or 20. I have 30 on here. I only have like 100 and I think 180 yards of 30-pound on here. But this was intended for the 8-inch to 14-inch swim baits. I actually have it on a Tackle Industries 7-foot XXH heavy, mega heavy rod. It's brutal. It's like basically a bass version of an ocean rod. It's intended for muskie. Yeah, it says 6 to 16 ounce swim baits, lures, weight, but it's like the Terminator of rods. It actually makes an ugly stick look like it's a child. It's ridiculous. It's so overbuilt, it's not even funny. But like 1.5 to 2 foot of it is handle. I mean, it's mind blowing, and that's why I got this loose, because I had seen a lot of people using this sc600 specifically for swim baits. It only has a 5:3 to 1 ratio, which is actually faster than I wanted for swim baits, believe it or not. I like the slower swim baits because, to me, that gives the fish more time to come up and attack. So these two pair really well together, but I've discovered that I prefer live bait to lures. So I've started, well, I haven't started, I've been cast netting and using live bait all the way up to like 7-inch gizzard shad. This reel, for having a lead weight and a piece of live bait, it casts so smooth. You don't do that cast where you rip the bait off. It just doesn't happen with this reel unless you horse it that bad. And this rod really doesn't allow it because it's so stiff that you have to do all of it in a smooth cast or it will rip whatever's on the end of the line off. So you have to have a complete balance between the rod and reel. But the rod itself is really, for how overbuilt it is, very light. It's still a very heavy rod, but this is a really heavy reel. So it's one of those ones that I can sit on my chair, I'm at the shoreline, I've got it down on the bottom for some flathead, some big channel cat, and I can sit with it in a holder all day, and I pick it up and it's comfortable. And the gears are just, oh my god, this reel is just super, super strong. Now, granted, it's not an ocean reel, round reel strong, obviously. They advertise, I think, 12 to a 14 max drag. They're being conservative as far as I am concerned, because let me tell you something, there's nothing light about this drag, like nothing. It will slay the biggest of fish in that class that you're going for. I also like the fact that it has, I think it's 114 millimeter handle, considered a magnum handle. It's got these nice, I think they're like 15 to 18, maybe 20 millimeter handles. They're considered bigger ones. It's got the screw cap so you can take these off and put whatever you want on. I've messed around with one, like those big old like 43 millimeter ones, but it's just, it would interfere too much. This reel is very balanced for what it is already. I mean, look at how it sits in hand. I mean, it sits right in the palm. It's right at that crux of size. It's not too big, it's not too small. It's heavy as fuck. I want that in this kind of reel if I'm using live bait or swim baits, because I want to have that like centrifugal force to when I pull back and set a hook and I'm fighting a fish. This has it in spades, folks. This was only like, I think, 80 on eBay. A little bit more expensive than what I'm used to spending on reels in general, but it, for what it is retarded. And even with 30-pound line, it casts so butter smooth. I don't know. I mean, it's already got carbon fiber stainless steel drag system in it, which I think may be upgraded from the factory. The only other issue I have with this thing, in the other side pumpkin, the slider for the click, okay? That slider for the click is plastic. Not the handle, I don't care if the handle's plastic. The mechanism on the inside that is actuated is, but the pin itself that does the click against the gears is metal. The gears are plastic. I don't know if they're nylon or ABS, I'm not sure. But the turning gears themselves are plastic. It does not keep this reel from being strong as fuck. Between the drag and the gears, it's still going to pull what you're going to have in. I'm going to replace them with metal gears, though, because I just don't like plastic. But that'll be down the road. I've got enough fishing stuff that I really don't have to worry about it at this point in time. But I just wanted to give you kind of a synopsis of where I came from with round reels and why I have what I have now. It's a perfect balance of things for me. It was way cheaper than like those Calcuttas or the Cardiffs or any of those other heavily built ones that even on eBay go for stupid money. And it will serve my purpose for a long time. A long time. The only other thing I gotta suggest to anybody that entertains buying this or any other round reel, inside these cases where this handle and turning gears are, there's a pin that goes along with the button, okay? When you're putting it on, it has to be down like this. And this thing is free floating. If it's not on that pin, it just goes up and down. So you gotta make sure that you hold your hand on the handle and that you line that pin up that's in the side here. Have to. And at the same time you're doing that, before you get to that point, you got to get the spool itself. Here, I'll go ahead and turn this around. You have to get the spool itself to line up in here with the gear so that it turns and you can feel it, okay? And then with this down and with that pin in there, you have to line up on the inside of this part. There's a cog that has two sets of indentations that are designed to take the cross tooth that comes off this side of the spool. If you don't line that up, you're not turning your reel, because that's what activates all the gears inside. Got to get those things lined up. I thought last night I was maintaining this thing and getting it re-oiled, and I've never had an issue. Oh, I did then. And I thought for the life of me I'd misplaced a part. It wasn't misplacing a part. It was the fact that I just hadn't lined that cog up and it wasn't activating. It was stuck. And if I'd have gone any further without cognizantly going, I may not have lined up into the T. That's what it was. So just watch out for that. But the Kalex, for an under $100 reel, without any modifications except for the upgraded oil and grease that I have in it, is phenomenal, in a word. It's heavily built, more than enough for most things you'll go for. It's got some shininess to it. I'm really not a here or there fan of shiny, but it's tasteful in the way it's done. And their warranties now are really good. So if you're looking at Lew's and you're looking at the SC600, this beast right here with the gold accents and the silver, you're not going to be disappointed unless you're going after like a 200-pound fucking Wells catfish, and then, well, you better have the appropriate equipment anyway. Anything of a reasonable size, you're never going to be disappointed with this reel. I've pulled in some monster flatheads with it, and it's worked very well for me.